Hello, welcome to this e-learning session of trichura, the another intestinal nematodes. Session, our objectives of today's session are: we'll discuss general features of this worm, trichura, its morphology, its life cycle, which is very simple. Human is the only host. We'll see the disease produced by this worm, its laboratory diagnosis, how we can diagnose the disease of this worm, and finally, in short, prevention and control of this disease. So if we see this worm, trichura, the name trichuris suggests hair-like tail. It is derived from two Greek words, trichus, that is hair, and uris means tail. Though it's a misnomer because its tail is not thin like hair, it is reverse. The tail is thick, posterior part is thick and fleshy, and its anterior part is thin. The other name, which is common name of this worm, is whipworm, and it is very appropriate because it looks like whip. We'll see that in morphology section. If we see distribution of this worm, it is very common in tropics. So Indian subcontinent, Africa, South America, these are the areas where you will find this worm burden significantly high compared to rest of the world. The habitat of this worm, you will find the adult worm found attached with large intestine, so cecum and appendix. If we see morphology, this adult worm, the size is around 3 to 5 centimeter, just like Ascaris lumbricoides, that is roundworm. The female is larger compared to male, and there is a characteristic morphology. If I'll show you just how it looked like. See, this is its interior end, and this is the posterior end, that is the tail. So this posterior almost which covers almost 40% of its body is thick and fleshy, while anterior end is thin, which is hair like. That's why it is known as whipworm, because this looks like the handle of the whip and this is like whiplash. So that is the morphology of adult worm. If we see the morphology of egg, it is a barrel shaped bile stem, so it would take bile from the stool, and it would look yellowish brown in color. And this two typical polar mucus plug, that is very unique to this, and that makes it very easy to identify this worm among all the intestinal nematodes. So that is the morphology of this worm. If we see life cycle of this worm, again it is very simple. If you see that human being is the only host of this worm, and human being get infection by ingestion of the infective form, which is embryonated egg of this worm, by eating contaminated food or water. When it is enter with food or water, the larva would come out in small intestine from the egg, and finally in large intestine it will convert itself into adult worm. Male and the female worms would be there, and after fertilization of these worms, there would be eggs would be excreted in the stool, and that egg would wait for another host to infect again. So it is basically fecal-oral transmission. But one thing you must think that it requires almost this much time to get mature and become again infective. So this freshly passed egg does not it is not infective and it does not infect anybody, but it requires to mature itself, and finally this egg which contains larva, that is the infective form of this worm. So that should be taken care of. So basically, this is the infective form, and this one is the diagnostic form, and that would diagnosis of this disease. Now, if we see the pathogenesis and the clinical features, uh, things to be noted is most of the infections are asymptomatic, and there would be no symptoms, or if at all symptoms are there, it would be very mild and will not lead to any diagnosis or the clinical diagnosis. But if the person is having heavy infection, the worm load is higher, there would be symptoms due to two things. One is the mechanical effect of the worm, and other is the allergic response. So sometime you will see that it may produce anemia. Again, the point to be noted here is it would not feed on the blood like hookworm, which is Ankylostoma duodenale, which sucks the blood from the intestine. It would not feed on the blood, but due to attachment of this worm to the mucosa of the intestine, there would be oozing of the blood, and that heavy infection may lead to blood loss, which is chronic in nature, may lead to anemia, and many times you would person would have diarrhea, which is mucus diarrhea in nature. One of the very important thing which would occur as a consequences of heavy infection, especially in the children, is the rectal prolapse. Though it is not very common feature, but uh, this is the thing which is uniquely associated with this disease, that is rectal prolapse. Again, it would not occur in the adult, it would occur in the children, where the entire rectum would come out, and that is the one of the feature which we need to remember in. Now we come to lab diagnosis, how to diagnose this disease. Just like other intestinal worms, stool examination is the key. You can take the portion of the stool, and under microscope we can see the typical eggs of this worm, and it is very easily you can identify this thing because it is a bile stain. The color of egg is yellowish brown, and this two polar mucus plug. This is very unique to this worm, and it is diagnostic, so you can identify this worm easily. Again, this is a very unique thing which is associated with this worm is when a person do that sigmoidoscopy, this would give coconut cake rectum appearance. Why it is coconut cake? Because the rectum is inflamed, and to that inflamed rectum many worms would be attached. The whitish worm would be attached on the rectum, which gives typical appearance of coconut cake. Eosinophilia is also one of the characteristic feature, though it is not the diagnostic, because many other parasitic diseases also have the eosinophilia, but it is an additional feature which you will see in the CBC examination, that marked eosinophilia would be there in the heavy infection of this worm. Finally, the prevention and control. So, the treatment part, like other intestinal nematodes, mebendazole and albendazole are the choice of drug which can control this infection. And to break the chain of the infection, sanitary disposal of feces, use of toilets can remarkably cut down the cases of this worm, because when person defecates in open area, the stool would have access to our food and water, and that cross contamination leads to transmission of this. Hygienic habits like hand washing before meals, before cooking the meals, would also decrease the chances of transmission of this infection. And health education, of course, that is the key to decrease the load of such intestinal worms. So with this today's session, the things to be remembered here, which is very unique to this worm, is one is the morphology, because its morphology is typical. It looks like rib. Posterior part of this worm, the tail part, is thick and fleshy, and anterior part is very thin, which gives it characteristic whip-like structure. And in egg, its egg is having two polar mucus plugs. So again, the shape of egg is also unique. And in pathogenicity, the points to be remembered are uh, in heavy infection, it may lead to anemia and the mucus diarrhea, and the characteristic is rectal prolapse. That is, though it is not a very common feature, but it is very uniquely associated with this worm. That is rectal prolapse in the children. So with this, we complete today's session. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any query, you can write in the comment box. It would be sorted out. Thank you.